2022 was not a banner year for X-Men comics. We had a lot of events, and Jordan White apparently is quite proud of it. He actually talked about that as well as previewing a little bit of 2023 with Adventures in Poor Taste to wrap up the year. And here to talk to me about that is X-Men historian and Marvel aficionado himself, Doc. How you doing, buddy?
I am wonderful, and I am far less out of touch with what happened in 2022 than Jordan White is.
The dude is definitely not in touch with anything other than the fact that I think he realizes Jonathan Hickman is the only reason a lot of people stuck around for a while. And he's hoping to tell you that Sins of Sinister is really a Jonathan Hickman idea. I do not believe him.
At every possible opportunity here, kind of was like, yep. And Jonathan Hickman was totally on board with this. Everything that's different and everything that we're doing now, he was totally in the room for when we discussed, even if he's not involved and, even if it changed a little bit. He's just trying to find a way to make us like it and try to excuse the fact Jonathan Hickman's not there and being like, but he might not be, but we got Kieran Gillen and Al Ewing now.
And there were a few questions. Let's dive into a couple of them here that I think just really exemplify what is wrong with X-Men right now. He was asked, what were the main challenges for X-Men in 2023 and what are you most proud of? This is what Jordan White said. Partway through the year, the idea of Axe Judgment Day got hatched. Man, I think Kieran did an amazing job on that. On some level, I want to say that's something to be proud of, but I didn't actually edit that book, so I don't want to take too much credit for all of it. Tom Brevoort did a great job on it, and Kieran nailed it. I'm super proud of all the things we did on our side as part of it. I think as far as Marvel events go, like big blockbuster events, big crossovers, it's the best one it ages. I absolutely disagree with that assessment, but I'm not shocked that there was no planning, care, or anything else put into Axe Judgment Day because I think it came out in the final product, which absolutely sucked and meant nothing in the end because by the final issue, they wiped everything clean that happened.
We've heard for so many years, oh yeah, these ideas, they're put together years in advance so that we can lead up to them and build up to them. Bitch, you just admitted that you came up with this idea already in the year. That's like just a couple of months before it actually launched. So it was just shoehorned in there because you realized nobody gave a fuck about your stupid dinner party anymore, because your dinner party was obviously your planned event for the year, the same way as it was last year, but nobody gives a shit this year. So you had to come up with something else. And this is your something else that you came up with. And it was terrible.
Well, it doesn't surprise me because the first thing that Jordan White did when he became the lead editor for the X-Men, the group editor, was plan out an event and basically fast track it. It was called Age of X-Men. And it's the only thing that the X-Men have done probably in the past 2 or 3 years that I think is actually worse than Axe Judgment Day, which I think sucked balls because by the end, it meant nothing.
That's what Jordan White does. When he puts together something, it's surface level at best, and by the time it's done, it undoes itself. And nothing in the interim really mattered.
Absolutely not. That's the way that X-Men feels right now. It feels so unimportant. They asked him another question. Can you share some of the behind-the-scenes discussions about Magneto and Storm's efforts to beat Uranus? Was there any debate about taking Magneto off the table? This is what Jordan White said. The question of whether any mutants were going to die in Judgment Day and whether there were going to be any permanent sacrifices did come up relatively early in the discussion. I believe Al volunteered Magneto, saying, you know what, actually Magneto could die, and here's how and why. I will say I was very much like, oh, I don't know about that. He's Magneto. He's a big deal. And also, he's a big part of your book, and you're doing amazing work with him. You really want to just go and Magneto is dead? But again, he was very much like, no, I think this works. I think it doesn't work because there's no stakes left in X-Men. You could kill off the entire cast, and I know they're going to be cloned and resurrected.
Yeah, exactly. The stakes have been low for X-Men ever since House and Powers. And I've been saying that for two and a half years now. I don't expect them to even be dead for a full panel at this point. The idea that this was somehow going to have any sort of gravitas or really matter at all is laughable on its face.
This guy does not realize the state of the X-Men universe itself. He doesn't realize the stakes have been removed. They're going to have to be more creative in this era of X-Men to make anything meaningful, and he's still taking the path of least possible resistance and doing the easy things that worked 30 years ago before resurrection was a day-to-day thing in the X-Men.
When Jonathan Hickman came in, I was very skeptical after House of Powers, because he did really limit the amount of stakes that there possibly could be in order to create some new kind of paradigm where there'd be new stakes. Except for he never got a chance to create whatever those new stakes would be. All of the clowns that both him and Jordan White brought into that office weren't smart enough or creative enough to come up with either. So now that he's gone, the little bit of, I guess, directorial benefit that he would produce to that office is gone as well. So now you have a full with a bunch of morons in his office. And I say that about every single writer in that office. I'm pretty sure every single one has the creativity and IQ of room temperature.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. They just keep doing the easiest stuff, the stuff that you see so often, especially with changing the sexuality of characters and stuff like that. What are the things that he's proud of? This is what they asked him. Rachel Summers clearly takes after her parents because her relationship with Betsy Braddock earned her the runner-up spot for favorite X-Men couple of the year in the Adventures in Poor Taste poll. This is what Jordan White said. I'm sort of surprised that didn't win because, yeah, this is one that's been building up for quite a while in the actual books that we've been publishing. In addition, that specific relationship is something that Tini Howard's been building to for years in each of them. I don't want to say it's the culmination because there's lots to come, but it was the acknowledgement of something that was believed or hinted to be for a long time without explicitly put on the page. Can you really build up to something for years if no one actually reads the comic book? I don't think anybody was expecting this because nobody knew it was fucking happening.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you have nobody reading a comic book, you can build up to anything and nobody's going to give a shit and everybody's going to be surprised when it happens because nobody read the lead up because the lead up sucked. This isn't rocket surgery here.
It also kind of tells you just kind of like the mindless Muppets that actually support Adventures in Poor Taste. That's why they have such bad journalistic integrity and most of their takes on comic books absolutely blow because the people that are voting for this actually thought this was the second best relationship after Cyclops and Jean Grey.
Honestly, it's just the Tumblr crowd. That's all it is. It's the Tumblr shipping crowd.
Well, that's who they're playing to, Doc. I think that's the X-Men audience at this point.
It is, and that's a very small audience. Nobody reads it. Nobody cares. Anybody that might have cared stopped reading it.
Yeah, for him to be like, oh, this was built up to, this is the culmination. It's the culmination of anything. It's just another thing to be embarrassed about. Go back to the real Captain Britain. Nobody wants to see Betsy Braddock as Captain Britain. They want to see her as Psylocke. I think people actually like that character. Nobody wants to see Rachel Summers shoehorned into some girl-on-girl relationship by Tini Howard so she can vouch that she's actually a lesbian even though she's married to a man.
Yeah, that's about par for the course. Considering that Betsy, I mean, let's ignore Rachel here for a second. Betsy has 45, 50 years being absolutely straight as a fucking arrow, either being in love with men or wanting men to fall in love with her. Even if she goes like the femme fatale route, where she has at times, she has shown absolutely zero interest in women.
It's not about the clam life, dude.
No, she's really not. The fact that Tini Howard feels like this is a logical conclusion or logical character progression for this character just shows me that she has never picked up a fucking comic with Psylocke's character in it in her entire life because none of it would make sense. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I think that's been quite apparent for a few years now, man. That's why everyone stopped reading. That's why people stopped reading Catwoman as soon as Tini Howard took over the damn book.
Yeah.
She's exposed.
Yeah, she is. Go back to whatever LARPing bullshit you want to do. Get out of my comics, bitch. You suck.
Not to be outdone is Jordan White. He talks about the end of the year. This is the last question that we'll talk about. I need to ask about Fall of X. It's early, but what can you share about this summer event? Have the seeds been planted for it, or do we have no idea what lies ahead? This is what Jordan White said. Both. Absolutely both. There's some stuff we have already for sure been setting up or have set up for a while, and there are parts that are going to be hopefully a total surprise that they haven't been shown yet. I don't think people will expect where it's going, but I'm very excited about where it's going. There's some really cool plans that we're working on for a little while now, and yeah, it starts in the summer and goes through the fall. Talk about the ultimate misread of the temperature in the room. People have event fatigue. X-Men fans, real X-Men fans, have absolute event fatigue. It's been event after event after an event after an event, and he's bragging about that this thing is going to take 4 or 5 months.
I don't even know if it's necessarily him being deluded. I think it's what it comes down to is he doesn't have the arsenal of creative talent to actually improve things. He doesn't have any vision himself in order to direct the sub-mediocre talent that he does have in that office to execute. And he doesn't know any other way to get things sold except for we can do an event. That's all he has.
We can steal a name from another event that was successful.
Yeah, like Inferno.
That would be good.
Yeah. Look, he doesn't have any other ideas. When the only tool in your entire arsenal is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And that's the only tool Jordan White has in his arsenal to try to sell comics and have that line successful is do an event. And all it is David Gabriel's tool that he borrowed because he's
playing with David Gabriel's tools.
Yes, he's probably is David Gabriel's tool. And look, when you're making $35,000 a year in New York City as an editor for Marvel Comics and you are broke as fuck, you're probably living entirely on your wife's paycheck. The reason why you're still in comics at 50 like him is because he doesn't have any other talent and he can't get hired in any other industry because he's not a creative person by any appreciable margin. He's just...
Think about back in the day, Doc. The editors on these books were Marv Wolfman. The Chris Claremont probably would have edited some book. Wheezy, obviously. There's been a whole host. Roy Thomas, obviously. Stan Lee. Some of the greatest writers of all time were overseeing the X-Men, Spider-Man, all the Marvel comic books. And now it's morons like Jordan White who have never had one iota of success in their entire comic book writing career. Yet somehow this guy is in charge of the most important line of team books in all the Marvel comics. The guy that should be in charge of this probably is Chris Claremont or somebody, anybody, maybe even Grant Morrison or someone like that that's actually had success in comic books and knows how to write a fucking story. That's the problem here, Doc. This guy has no talent.
You are absolutely correct. And look, you can look at every single editor in that office, from Jordan White down to
Annalise Beza. I think
Annalise Beza. There's 3 or 4 other ones that are in that office.
Sarah Brunstad's the really, really bad one.
Yeah, not a single one of them has ever written a fucking thing. None of them have written anything. These people can't teach either because they don't know what they're doing. None of them know what they're doing. None of them has a single clue on anything here. I don't know if any of them even knows what a 3-act structure is. I think all of your basics. I think all of your basics of writing 101 shit, none of these people have ever learned. And they're just oh, well, here's a Tumblr fic I liked. Here's something from AO3 that got a lot of views, so let's just copy that. Let's copy that structure. And it's just shit. It results in shit. They don't even know what they don't know. And I think that's what it comes down to.
All of this has led to the perfect storm in X-Men of just really bad comic books. There's not one standout series. There's one series that's readable, X-Men Red, and it's not even all that good. It actually swept, I think, all the polls for Adventures in Poor Taste because it's the one comic book that just isn't outright terrible. Everything else there sucks. This is the very worst era in the history of X-Men. Doc and I explained it all, what went so wrong and why this isn't working. If you don't see the video here, there's also a link in the video description.